How's it going, guys and gals? Mr. Bass here, and we are getting into jerk bait season, which is always fun. Colder weather means the jerk bait. And I'm getting some of my jerk baits ready. And I want to talk to you about why you may want to switch out your treble hooks on your jerk baits, your brand new jerk baits. Now, I have buddies that are fishermen and they're cheap and they're like, no way am I going to replace factory hooks. The bait comes with hooks, I'm going to use the hooks. Well, there's some lures you can do that. Some companies, bait companies, put fantastic hooks on their lures, but a lot of companies don't. A lot of companies maybe focus on a really good lure, but they cheap out on the hooks. And this is a prime example. Here is a very well-known jerkbait in the fishing community. It's made by Megabass, and it is called the Ito Vision 110. And it is a fish catching machine. It's a fish slayer. And they're pricey. These are expensive lures, $25 for one jerkbait. So you would think, now just to kind of give you a comparison if you don't know about jerkbaits, the average jerkbait probably costs you around $8, $9. So this shows you how much more expensive this thing is. You would think for a $25 jerkbait, they're going to have amazing hooks on them. Let's open this new one up, brand new one. Each Megabass Vision 110 comes with these Katsawagi out barb hooks. If you notice, they look different. They're not perfectly round. They're kind of shaped funky. And then the barb is on the outside of these hooks, an out barb. So you think, wow, this is a Japanese bait. It's a high dollar lure. They've got these fancy hooks. This must be something amazing. And you want to know the truth about these fancy hooks? They suck. Check this one out. Here's a lure, a Megabass, with the Katsawagi out barb treble hooks. They're terrible. They're weak. They're brittle. As you can see, I fished with this today, and a fish will do this. A big, strong fish will bend these hooks out. Not only that, here's something else they'll do. Look, it completely broke this barb off. And that's very common with these Megabass hooks. And this is a scale of a fish. These Megabass lures are great fish catching lures. So I don't want to disparage the lure at all, but their hooks are terrible even for a $25 lure. So do yourself a favor, get to know your lures, figure out which ones have great hooks. Like, for example, 6 Sense Lures puts great hooks on their baits. I think right out of the box, you can take a 6 Sense lure, crankbait, whatever, and factory stock hooks, no problem. But many of your hooks need to be replaced, just like this Megabass. This is a real world example. It happened to me today, and I wanted to show you. Look at those hooks. Ridiculous. And I knew better. I knew I needed to replace these, but I just got lazy, didn't do it, and look what happened. This is a real deal. Now, you can get carried away. You don't need to replace every hook on every one of your lures. Just get to know which ones need replaced and replace them. But I can give you a tip right now. If you're going with a Megabass jerkbait, the Ito Vision 110 or any of their jerkbaits for that matter, you've got to replace the hooks. Get you a good Gamakatsu treble hook, or a good Mustad treble hook, or a good VMC treble hook, and fix that lure so that you catch fish. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about treble hooks more here. I showed you this this megabass jerk bait, and the fact that the hooks basically broke and pulled off. Here's one of those hooks that bent out. I'm trying to do this. Oh, this camera's a little hard. And here's one of the hooks that broke off. And these, like I was saying, these megabass hooks are notorious, especially for that, for breaking off. You'll get a nice fish on. So you got to upgrade hooks on this lure, on these megabass jerk baits. But man, once you do, they're fantastic. But I just thought, in case you don't know a lot about treble hooks, and I'm not going to go into them, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but the smaller the number, like this is size 1, that's your biggest hook in this group here. It goes bigger than size 1, but for what I use, I rarely get any bigger than size 1. So you go from size 1, size 2 gets a little smaller, 3 gets a little smaller, all the way down to size 8 is about the smallest I use. And that just kind of gives you an idea of the sizes. Now there's different types as well. There's short shank, and short shank, the shank is this part of the hook. Sometimes you want a longer shank. Sometimes you want a shorter shank. This is an EWG, extra wide gap hook, which means it's got a little wider hook to it than, say, just a normal round bend. And a lot of times I prefer EWGs because they tend to hold the fish a little better, but sometimes that doesn't make sense. Then this, of course, is a finesse treble, which just means, as you can see, it's a much lighter wire, but sometimes that lighter wire is needed depending upon the presentation. So before you just start buying hooks and putting hooks on and replacing hooks, you kind of need to understand about the hooks, and you need to understand what they're used for and what you may need in each application. And I've screwed this up. I've learned the hard way. Years ago, I decided, boy, I'm going to upgrade my hooks, and I just went and started buying hooks and putting hooks on. And then I thought, I read or heard somewhere, well, heck, a bigger hook's got to be better. No, that's not always true. There are times when you want to upsize hooks, and then there's times when you don't, and I'm going to show you that. So let me push these out of the way for a minute. Let's go back to my jerk bait. Let's go back to this megabass jerk bait here. Now, these hooks are size 6 hooks. They're not huge. Here's the hook that I like to use for my jerk baits. It's an EWG short shank. The magic eye just means it's easier to slide onto a split ring. But that's the kind of hook I use for this. Well, the hooks are small. They're not tiny, but they're small. And you might say to yourself, man, I bet if I had a bigger hook on this thing, my hook ratio would go up. And that might be true. The problem is, jerk baits a lot of times are either, there's different types of them, but most of the time a jerk bait is a suspending jerk bait, meaning it's going to just stay in the water a certain way. These jerk baits usually are suspend nose down, and it's part of their action that they suspend, or maybe they sink very slowly. The problem is if you put really big hooks on, like if I put these number 1s on here, could I do it? Yeah, I could do it. But the problem is it would mess up with the action when I'm twitching the bait, jerking the bait, and it also would make the bait sink faster, and it would screw up the effectiveness of the bait. It would be a very, very bad idea. So you have to know what your lure does in the water before you start upsizing hooks. So what I would say as a rule of thumb, if you don't know, but you know the hooks are crappy and need to be replaced, swap out the same size that's on it. If you do that, at least you're not going to mess that up. What I would generally say is for jerk baits, I do not upsize jerk bait hooks. On a topwater though, like a plug, a lot of times you can upsize the hook on a plug, on a topwater bait, on a walking bait, because they float. And a little extra weight is not going to make the floating bait sink. Now what it might do is it might make the nose go down, and then when you try to walk the dog, it messes up the action. So you have to know that. But a lot of times on my topwater lures, I will upsize and put a bigger hook on them. Here's another lure. This is a topwater lure that I upsize. This is called a Dog X Junior. This is the size hook that comes with this lure out of the box. Small. It's a size 8. But look what I put on this. Huge compared to what the factory provides, right? Much, much larger. But what I've found is the bass love this little bait, but they swipe at it most of the time. And they don't just go up and swallow it, they swipe at it. So when they swipe at it, if you got these little hooks, you're going to miss fish more than half the time. You put this bigger size 4 hook on here and you catch them, your hookup ratio goes way up, and it doesn't change the action of this bait in the water. So I go way big on that. But you got to know, and the way you learn is by experimenting. You know, you start fishing with this size hook, and then you realize, man, those hooks just aren't very effective. And you bump it up and experiment until you know for sure what you can do. The other thing is hooks are really expensive. If you notice, here's 6 hooks for $9. Here's 6 hooks on clearance for $4.50. The regular price is way more than $4.50. I don't know what the regular price was. The bottom line is hooks are not cheap. They're very expensive. And if you're on a limited budget, what I recommend is pay a little more and buy a bait that already has good hooks on it, and then you won't have to spend the money for extra hooks. Now you are going to have some extra hooks because some are going to get broken and bent out and rusted. So I'd mentioned 6 Sense Lures. I'm not sponsored by these guys or anything, but they make great baits. And you can see on this crankbait, it just comes with excellent hooks. These are EWG hooks. They're big, beefy hooks. They're super strong hooks. They're super sharp hooks. They're great. So even if you had to pay an extra $1, say for a 6 Sense crankbait over a cheap Walmart crankbait, it might be the best way to spend your money because you don't have to replace the hooks. Here's another 6 Sense lure that just great hooks. Here's another one right in the box, and you can see this is how they come, with really good hooks. Other lures that you really can't do stuff, you shouldn't change much, is here's another one like a spy bait or a spin bait. This has a very specific action in the water. Without the action that this bait is designed to make, it's not going to catch you nearly as many fish. So don't mess with the hooks. If you do have to replace the hooks, I would not upsize those hooks. That's just another example of knowing your lure. And then here's a lure, a lipless crankbait or a rattle trap. This is Strike King's Red Eye Shad. These things, you just rock and roll. You chuck and wind, and you may yo-yo them and stuff like that. You can upgrade these hooks all day, every day if you want. It's not going to change the effectiveness or the action of that lure. You may not need to, but if you want to, it works on this kind of lure. So you just need to know what your lure does, what kind of action it has. You need to know the hooks, and then you'll understand better what needs to be changed and how to change it and that sort of thing. All right, so I thought I would go ahead and change out some hooks real quick on one of my megabass jerk baits. as I started this video, the megabass hooks are terrible, in my opinion, and I'm going to change them. And in case you don't know how to do this, it's simple, but I'll go ahead and show you how I do it. The thing that will make your life 100% easier is you need to get yourself a pair of split ring pliers. There's a lot of manufacturers out there. I really like this. I've tried a bunch of different ones. This is a simple set of pliers. This one's made by Texas Tackle, and I just really like how simple and easy it is to use. So that's what I use. So I take my number 6 trebles out of the package, and you take your split ring pliers, and the split ring plier has a little, let's see if we get it to focus here, that little nib that pokes out. That's what you're going to pinch the groove with on the split ring, just like this. See if I can get it to focus on it. Just like that. See how you just basically close down on the plier and it spreads open the split ring, and then all you do is start your hook out. Now what I do, and I think probably most people do this, before I go any further and run that hook off the ring, I've already got the gap open, and I go ahead and put the new hook on at the same time. So I just take and slide it on, and it's really not hard to do. And then once you get it on, you just put your pliers back in to grip it for you, and you just force them around like so, and the old hook comes off and your new hook is on. That's it. It's that simple. So you can do it quickly. Now if you don't have split ring pliers, it's a real pain to take. It's a super pain to take these things off and on. But that's all there is to it. That's like treble hook replacement 101. That's all you do. Toss your old hook. Depending upon the quality of the hook, you may want to save it as a spare in an emergency. I would not save any of these crappy megabass hooks, but there are other hooks that I will save and reuse over time. But that's it, and hopefully this helps you as you think about and try to figure out when to replace treble hooks and when to upgrade treble hooks, and hope that helps.